First diagnosis was ADHD when I was 12, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. When I was 12, it was back in 1989, and we had not made progress on this particular diagnosis, or really psychology as a whole. Nothing psychological was spoken amongst the masses. It was actually quite taboo. That's still true to this day, but back in the day, before the internet, it was on another level. Picture the comments on Twitter and Instagram. How ruthless they are. Well, that's how people spoke to each other's faces back when I grew up. Whereas in this day and age, I can come online and can tell you all about all my weaknesses. Back then, not a chance. People would drive you into the dirt. The next day after the diagnosis, I was given a pill. We didn't have Adderall or Vyvanse back then. This was actually pre-Ritalin, and they gave me a pill called Dexedrine. Before I get into the effects of Dexedrine, let me tell you a little bit about how I grew up and what signs others may have picked up on me to come to the conclusion that I did need medication. I guess I was just always wired a little bit differently. Let me give you an example. When I was like 6 years old, we were in first grade and we were in a music class. The teacher had us sit in a circle and she started playing music. One at a time, we had to get up and dance in the middle of the circle in front of all the class. The first 7 or 8 kids got up and barely moved at all. They were very shy. They were embarrassed. When it was my turn to get up and get into the middle of the circle, I started dancing immediately. I let the harmony just come into my body and start to control me. I was tiptoeing through the tulips. It felt like the teacher let my dance go on forever. And when she finally stopped the music, everybody started to clap and cheer loudly. The kid that went after me, though blushing beet red, also started to lean into the music and the dance. But just watching me had inspired them and many others in the class to be able to let loose a little bit. Another indication was when I was in grade 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. They took me out of class 2 times a week for an hour in a program called Primary Project. When I was in Primary Project, they would let me play video games during school. We would go outside and play catch. I would go to the basketball court and shoot hoops. And even though I don't have the memory or recollection of exactly why I was taken out of the class, it had to have been because I was being a disruption. But let's get back up to speed. I'm 12 years old in the 7th grade. Yesterday, I got diagnosed by some doctor telling me I got ADHD. Now, I'm taking a new medication. Down the hatch, and I'm on my way to school. While I'm on the bus, all of a sudden, I start to feel different, much different. That feeling continues as I walk into school. Up until then, I was a social guy. I had no problem making friends. And even though I had a few enemies, the general consensus was that I was a good guy. The first symptom of the Dexedrine was obvious immediately. When people said hello to me, I could barely even nod in their direction. Socially, I was done. If someone stopped me to have an actual conversation, I couldn't think of a word to say. Dexedrine completely killed my social presence. I didn't exist inside it. It's like that part of me was it's like somebody flipped the switch and that part of me was done. Where Dexedrine was a strength, though, is I couldn't stop doing my schoolwork. I studied for every test. I always got good grades, so it definitely wasn't worth it for me, but I went from an A student to an A+++ student. I had never studied a day in my life, but I was studying then. I loved to read. I was retaining an extraordinary amount of information. So there was definitely positives to this, but feeling crippled socially was too big of an ask for me. And that's when my drug use really started. Before, when I went to parties, I listened to Nancy Reagan. I just said no. I was proud of myself to be able to stand up to peer pressure like that. But the first party I went to when I was on Dexedrine and couldn't speak at all, I tried alcohol for my first time. But even though I puked my guts out that night, it unlocked that creative imagination that I always had inside of me, but I took for granted until the pills took it away. And when I say it took away my imagination, it didn't even leave one drop. But up until that Ralph, I was talking to everybody. I got to be myself. But as you can imagine, it took us down a very slippery path. Second diagnosis coming soon.